Hello everybody, Dark Skeleton here, and today we're back again for 3 more Whispers of the Old God card reviews, including the Dark Arakkoa, which is a 6 mana 5/7 taunt. Remember, of course, that Boulder Fist Ogre is a 6 mana 6/7, just bland 6/7, and that's already pretty decent, pretty good in arena mode too. But this guy has the added effect, Battlecry, give your Cthulhu +3/+3 wherever it is, and +3/+3 is a nice amount of extra stats, a nice amount of extra Avenging Wrath damage when that Cthulhu hits the field. And also don't forget about the Cthulhu buffing up synergy that also buffs cards like the Klaxi Amber Weaver, making that, I believe, is it a 4/9 when your Cthulhu has 10 or more attack? So given that, a 6 mana 5/7 is already pretty good when it has taunt. I mean, let's take a look at some of the other cards. Sludge Belcher would be a 5 mana 3/5 taunt, Death Rattle into a 1/2 taunt. A standard 6 mana taunt would be the Master Jouster or Sunwalker, which have less stats than this guy, given that they have Divine Shields, or the potential for Divine Shield in the case of Master Jouster. But in many cases, the Dark Arakkoa is straight up equal or better, and well, in some cases. But then you factor in that you're making a Cthulhu deck out of this. And with a Cthulhu deck, getting that +3/+3 is actually kind of a decent deal, it seems like. So, by itself, it's a pretty solid minion. In a Cthulhu deck, it's icing on the cake. I think you would definitely run this if you were playing Cthulhu. Is it good enough to run without Cthulhu, though? A 5/7 taunt versus a 4/5 taunt like a Sunwalker, which doesn't really get played much, but it does an Astral Communion Druid, is that what it's called? A little bit. Could make the cut. It's kind of hard to tell. I think 3 stats is probably worth a Divine Shield. So, comparable to a Sunwalker, but then you Battlecry it. And the Battlecry makes it great in Cthulhu decks. So this is a solid card in Cthulhu decks. A good arena pick, for sure. I mean, a 5/7 taunt, that's pretty good. Much better than the crappy 6 mana 6/5 Lord of the Arena. What a joke. You want taunts to have a lot of HP, and this guy has a lot of HP, so that's pretty solid. Not much more to say about it. It's just a solid minion, and it goes straight into a Cthulhu deck. I definitely think any Cthulhu Druid would be crazy not to run this card. Okay, next up, Hunter Legendary. Of all things, it is Princess Huhuran, something like that, which I don't really know much about, but I think that's a Silithid or something along those lines. I haven't really been keeping up with WoW lore. So, let's see. It's a 5 mana 6/5. Battlecry, trigger a friendly minion's death rattle effect immediately. Which is interesting, because there are some death rattle effects which are really powerful if you're able to get them off. For instance, Sylvanas Windrunner, which you couldn't play on the same turn with this unless you had a way to cheat out some extra mana or reduce mana cost like Tharzan. The Twilight Summoner is a 4 mana 1/1 that death rattles into a 5/5. That would be insane with this. 6/5 that gives you a 5/5 on the board. Oh man, that's just super good. Cairn Bloodhoof, just summon a 4/5 as a Battlecry. The thing is, the way that this card is played is kind of being more of a control style hunter. I think there were a couple hunter cards that were added earlier in this set that, like the 4/2 that gives all death rattle minions in your hand +1/+1. So, kind of seems like they want to make death rattle hunter a thing. It didn't become a thing with Feign Death. Would it become a thing with this? Maybe in about the same capacity as a Raptor Rogue did, where it was sort of a deck, but not really super dominant, so a little bit gimmicky. Doesn't really fit the theme of Rogue, just like this doesn't exactly fit the theme of most Hunter decks, which is kill your opponent faster. But there's definitely something to be said about Death Rattle minions. If you have good Death Rattle minions, it's really hard to deal with on the board, and if you can't clear the board, then eventually they're going to basically break down your HP, and you'll just die to the Hunter. Savannah Highmane, another obvious choice, would definitely go in the same deck. So any of those Battlecries, I mean, any of those death rattle effects you can get off of this, gonna be really good. Definitely. I don't know if you'd run Twilight Summoner and Hunter, though. That might be pushing it a bit much, because it's just a really slow card. So overall, I mean, this is a 6/5 to begin with. A 5/5 like Lothab, which has a great Battlecry effect, would get played. So a 6/5 that has a great Battlecry effect would get played if Death Rattle Hunter is a thing. or maybe not just Death Rattle Hunter, but you could just say mid-range Hunter, and you don't have to go full on with the Death Rattle thing. You just have to play a couple cards like Savannah Highmanes and maybe Sylvanas Windrunner, or whichever other cards you want to go ahead and throw in it. I think in a vacuum, this card is super good. It's super good, but it's not really for the right class, if that makes any sense. That said, definitely can see how Blizzard is trying to push Hunters in that direction, where it may be a good thing to play a bunch of Death Rattle minions in Hunter. It's not out of the question. I mean, a lot of the good Death Rattles are leaving. Haunted Creepers, Piloted Shredder, and those were just super standard in like a mid-range Hunter. So, seeing Death Rattle minions in a Hunter deck isn't too unusual. It's just a matter of, are there going to be enough quality Death Rattle minions to justify a card like this? And that's whether or not it's good. Remember, in a vacuum, this card is super good, but it really depends on what kind of decks you can build around it. Okay, next up, the Twilight Flamecaller, a 3-mana 2/2, deal 1 damage to all enemy minions. So it's literally a standard 2/2 minion that's meshed in with a Arcane Explosion that can't benefit from spell damage. Usually when cards give you 2 effects, like you're getting a minion and what would be considered another card's effect at once, that's pretty good. Like the Shifting Shade, the new 4-mana 4/3 for Priest, that Battle Cry, you just copy a card from your opponent's deck. That's really good in terms of value. This is really good in terms of value. Can be pretty good in terms of tempo too, if you have the right situation. The problem is Arcane Explosion was never really played because you kind of had to throw a card away in order to have it in your deck. It's a little bit situational for when it's good, and dealing 1 damage, I mean, you already have the hero power for that. That said, I think if you think of the Arcane Explosion as a 1-mana card that you don't even have to pay a card for, and you're still getting a iffy minion, combined, those actually add up to a pretty solid card. So for control decks, this is quite nice. It's like a free whirlwind that doesn't have to hit your own minions. Like a patron deck might want to hit your own minions, but would a control mage? Probably not. I mean, Acolyte of Pain is really the only card in neutral minions, I think. I mean, outside of Grim Patron, obviously, that really want to get beat up on by your own effects. So, Twilight Flamecaller is nice. Yeah, I mean, pretty much. It blows up some of your opponent's minions, takes down Divine Shields. If you're playing Wild Mode and you happen to take down a Haunted Creeper, you can follow it up with one of these and fry the rest of the field. Just 1 random damage to everything on your opponent's field is a pretty dang good effect. You could kind of think of it as like a Wild Pyromancer, where you don't have to pay a spell in order to get its AoE effect. And then it doesn't damage your minions either, but sometimes when you play Wild Pyromancer, you do want it to hit your own Acolyte of Pain. It's definitely a situational card, so I don't think it's going to be run much in, say, a Tempo Mage, but if you're playing a Control Mage or Freeze Mage or anything along those lines, this would be a solid pick. Reno Mage as well. I would definitely run one of these in there. I mean, it's a free Arcane Explosion that also gets your minion. There's not much to say about it beyond that, but I mean, that makes it pretty good in itself. You get a crappy 2/2, and you get an Arcane Explosion, and all you have to do is play 3 mana and 1 card for it. It's just solid value. Not much else to say there. But, yeah, we'll see how that goes. But it should be a pretty good card to play. In any case, I've been Dark Skeleton. Thanks for watching once again, and I'll try to tune in tomorrow to see if there's more cards to review. And until then, guys, see you then.